Go ahead, Chris.
Yep. Is Chris frozen?
It seems so. Okay, well, until Chris comes back in, let's get started, Eden. Welcome to all our viewers, whether you are
Until
on
Chris comes back.
CBN or Channel 82 in Bermuda, as well as on Facebook Live Territory Stock page. I welcome you on behalf of my co-hosts, Chris Famous, he'll be right in, and Mr. Eden Hurlston from hailing from Cayman Islands. Tonight, as we had advertised, we're supposed to be speaking about women in leadership, and I'm very excited about this topic.
Yes.
But
yes.
Eden is very excited. For those who may have missed the presentation last time, where we talked about responsible real estate development in our different territories, you said you had some updates for us. So we'd love to hear what's happening.
I have a well, there's a couple of short updates, and I'm thinking of this kind of like it's some bad news, some medium news, and some good news.
Okay.
And so, good evening to everybody. And big shout out to Channel 82 in Bermuda and CBN Radio in the Virgin Islands, and everybody on Facebook across the Caribbean. We can start with the bad news. We've been having some really strange decisions being made about developments happening here that seem to be taking us off of a climate action and climate positive track. We're expecting some clarification on why we've had some decisions about clearing mangroves lately, even though that it seemed like that was, purely stated as something that was going to be more protected, and we saw some good decisions come forward, but it's been like a real roller coaster. So we're keeping a close eye on what is going on here with a 10-story development that's happening in central Georgetown happening right next to a historic house. So you're going to have an example of giant brand new South Beach style kind of hotel going right next to a historic house from Georgetown. We're having difficulty determining how to get community say in on these things, as well as one thing that I talked about last time, which was the light pollution coming from the new development called Finn in South Sound. So these are some things we're keeping an eye on, but we're feeling very uneasy about things that right after we felt kind of positive about some things that are going on, some really strange decisions have come. So I'll be keeping folks updated on what's happening on my Facebook page, and I'll be adding some things to Territories Talk in more general sense as well. But what we're really hoping for is to see climate positive, climate action oriented things and get some equilibrium going back here, because our property market is shot way out of the range of average Caymanians, and it's a real problem in creating inequity and creating in furthering poverty. So hopefully we're going to see these things get addressed.
Okay.
As far as the medium news, COVID update, we're having community spread now for the first time in 14 months. The reason I'm looking at it as medium news is because it had to happen at some point. And generally speaking, people are doing well. There's not a lot of intense symptomology. People in general aren't intensely ill. And so that, is the good part about this, because the main thing that we all have to be unified all around the world is we don't want people being ill. We don't want people dying, right? Whether you're vax, no vax, whatever your case might be politically, I think we can all agree that we don't want to see people in hospital. So that is a good part about this. And the other good thing that makes it a little bit good is that discussions are happening that really need to be happening. We've been living in too much of a bubble in Cayman, and it's kind of like welcome to the rest of the world. I think it's high time that those discussions got going. and high time that we empathized a bit more with what is going on in the rest of the world and get real with this instead of thinking that we can hide from it forever. So
I
hopefully we're
agree.
going to deal with this in a positive way and be able to grow stronger as a people through this, and be able to communicate better
Mhm.
with our Caribbean neighbors and with the rest of the world in regards to tourism and how to deal with COVID and everything like that. And
Okay.
then the very good news, in case they're watching or in case any friends are watching, I had shared a video of coral spawning
Hmm.
happening from some good friends who run eco divers and Cayman Eco Divers, and they are now permanent residents in Cayman. A fine example of our citizenship process being used in a very good way to add some very good people. So Britt and Aaron, congratulations on a Caymanian at heart, as far as I'm concerned, this whole time, and thank you for all you do in helping the coral reefs in the Caribbean and in Cayman. So welcome to the family.
Awesome.
And I think, and that's very positive. It really made my day.
Good. Well, yeah,
Yeah.
that's a good note to end on. Chris, are you back?
I'm back. Can you see me?
Yes, we
Yeah,
see you.
you froze up,
Okay.
man.
Yeah, technology. Um, so welcome to our third episode of Territories Talk. And like everything else, first we want to thank the Almighty for protecting us because
Mhm.
since the last time we had a Hurricane Larry, yes,
Yes.
one of the three Stooges
Hmm.
came close to Bermuda, and like Tropical Storm Grace, his cousin,
Hmm.
at the last minute diverted away. So we're very grateful for that.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, in Bermuda we have another storm. It's called Hurricane called COVID. I'll get into some details later on.
Hmm.
So as Eden said, shout out to Channel 82 in Bermuda, CBN Radio in the Virgin Islands, and the hundreds of persons who are now following us on Facebook.
Yes.
Like everything else that you grow, it all starts with a seed. And within the last month, we've now had we're up to close to 500 followers on Facebook.
Hmm.
So we want to thank them for their faithfulness. Every day, I've been getting WhatsApps from people saying, "Oh, I saw this on Facebook," and we have a few interesting developments, and I'll talk about that in our any other business segment.
Okay.
Um, One of the things that we decided when we started the show was that we'll dedicate one show per month to the women of the overseas territories. I say that not flippantly, but because we as men, especially myself and Eden, we have to do our part to advance women leadership in our territories. Um, Women are the backbone of our families, our communities, our political parties, our civil and elected governments. And for too long, men have pushed them to, to parts unseen. And one of the tenets of this show is to highlight the women of the overseas territory. So this is our first episode of Women in Leadership. As we all know, there are different fields of leadership. There's community, civic organization, business, and yes, political leadership. So tonight we feature three leaders from
Hmm.
three different islands. Uh, Speaker Shirley Osborn of Monserrat, Senator Arianna Hodgson of Bermuda, and soon to be MP in the next election, Miss MP or District Representative, as they say in Virgin Islands,
Hmm.
Miss Smith Archer of which district you want to run in?
I'm going to be territorial, so I'm at large.
Oh, at large. Sorry, she
Yes.
wants everything.
Yes, yes. We gotta look out for everybody.
Um, so Eden and I will be taking a backseat and asking questions now and then, but the uh, the 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 meat of the show will be a conversation of women by women. But just as a leader, women have become so much more politically active than just grassroots or party level positions. They are now rightfully more and more seeking and winning elected and appointed seats of political power. Elected meaning they're MPs or appointed in Bermuda's instance as senators. And in some other territories, they do have appointed spots. So around the world, here's some brief statistics. In Iceland, 47% of their parliament consists of women. Closer to home, in Grenada, 47% of the legislature is comprised of women. In the African country of Rwanda, 59 of 106 legislators are women. That means more than 50%.
Mm-hmm.
In Cayman Islands, they now have over 25% of their legislators are women. In a following show, we'll go over the percentages. But in the African country of Ethiopia, 10 out of 20 cabinet minister posts are held by women. And finally, in Turks and Caicos Island, there are 3 women elected legislators, MPs, and all 3 are cabinet ministers. So
Awesome.
that's just a brief overview. Yet there's a lot more work that has to be done
Mm-hmm.
by women and men. But for tonight, we are going to highlight 3 women leaders from the overseas territory. So without further ado, I'm going to start in positions of seniority. Speaker Shirley Osborn, not superiority, but seniority. Sorry.
Actually,
Speaker
we
Sir.
lost her feed, so if you could send her a quick text
Okay.
so she can log back in.
All right. Let me do that now.
Yeah.
And then there is, okay, so we have Senator Arianna Hodgson of Bermuda. He's also Junior Minister of Finance, Health, and what is else is it, Senator?
Labor, actually.
And Labor.
Mm-hmm.
And we have soon to be District Representative at large, Smith
I
Archer.
love his vote of confidence. I'm going to take it and run with it.
Yes. Pun intended?
Yeah. Yes,
Okay.
sir.
And shout out to, I just saw a WhatsApp, Miss Sandy Gilbert in Bermuda, who sent around a note to let everybody tune into Channel 82.
All right. Okay, and we now have Madam Speaker.
Yes, good evening, Madam Speaker.
I can't find you now. I can't see you.
You're not
Okay.
seeing us?
No, I'm hearing you loud and clear, but I'm not finding you. There you are. All right. Sorry
Okay,
about that. Yes.
Alrighty. Great.
Hi, good evening, everybody. Good evening.
Good evening.
So, Madam Speaker, I'll allow
Yes.
you to introduce yourself briefly to the people of the overseas territory, Bermuda, Virgin Islands, Monserrat, Anguilla, Cayman Islands, and Turks and Caicos.
All of us. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, I'm Shirley Osborn. I'm from Monserrat, former speaker, the immediate past speaker, and the second woman speaker in the Parliament of Montserrat. When I saw the questions you sent in, I had a laugh because I don't know if you saw the CARICOM Africa Summit the other day. Well, I heard us described as Caribbeaners. Did you hear that? And I thought,
yes, Honorable Gaston Brown called us Carabiners.
Caribbeaners, yes.
Yeah.
So yes, that's who I am. Politics is something I am particularly interested in. It's a life, it's a family thing, and the status, the status of the people in the overseas in the Caribbean at large and the overseas territories particularly is of particular interest to me. One of my major focuses of my work from ever since has been on women and girls, safety and security for women and girls, and issues of leadership and inclusion. That's where most of my work is focused.
Okay, thank you. And Senator Hodgson, you want to tell the people of the overseas territories a little bit about yourself?
Yes, thank you. So good evening, everybody. Thankful for this opportunity to share with you all this evening. I am Senator Arianna Hodgson. I am the Junior Minister for Labor and finance, and most recently health. I am a mother to one 6-year-old. I am one of 2 daughters born to a mother who was born and raised in Brazil, but had Swedish parents, and then a father who has a Guyanese mother and a Bermudian father. Politics for me as well has been something that's part of the family legacy. I think I avoided it for a good bit of the first part of my life, but it's something I found myself in, and I'm thoroughly enjoying it. For me, I think it's the opportunity to make an impact that really has drawn me to politics and keeps me going. And so essentially that is me.
Okay. And we have future district representative, Mrs. Smith Archer.
If only your vote counted, it would be awesome.
Yeah. Well, that's one of 5,000 that you need.
Yeah, about that. So we're gonna work on it from tonight. For those that may be just tuning in for the first time, I'm one of the co-hosts here on Territories Talk, Shaina Smith Archer, hailing from the beautiful Virgin Islands. I'm actually a greater Virgin Islander. Time out? What happened?
The Republic of French Key in the Virgin Islands.
Oh, the Republic of Freshman's Key. Okay, we're gonna hold off on the annexing just yet.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was born actually in St. Thomas and grew up in Tortola. So Virgin Islands is what I've known, most of my life. And I wear many hats, as my cousin Chris alluded to. Currently, I am actually working with the Chamber of Commerce as the chairman of the board. So I do a lot of advocacy work. Activism has been something that's been a part of me for probably the last 20 years, since I've relocated back from college back in 2003. And I started off working with the Virgin Islands Civil Service Association there as a president, and then got involved with the chamber as a member, and then eventually on the board and worked through the various positions. But as my fellow sisters have just said, activism for me is politics is more about activism. It's about helping people. It's about wanting to see us as a people, as a country, excel at our potential, and that be for everybody. So I guess I fell into politics, so to speak. I remember one of the first speeches that I gave Chris was at my high school graduation as valedictorian. And somehow it seemed to have had a political bent that I didn't realize. And it was something that touched on a lot of the issues. And from then I learned, politics is really about everyday life. And it touches all of us because this is about decision making. This is how we govern the country. And if it's going to affect you, whether you want to be involved in it or not. So, I had to take the decision that, I want to be involved because I do want to see better for my country. So if not me, who? And if not, no, when? So I will pause there.
Okay. So thank you for that. And we've established
brief.
I
feel like I didn't, give all of my bits.
We have
an hour to play with, so we're going to pile it all on.
All right. So as we've established the order of protocol, Madam Speaker, what led you into your respective profession? Not the political side as yet, but who Shirley Osborn is as a professional.
I think it was mostly, it was my parents. It goes back to my parents. Like I said, my father was a politician. My mother was a teacher, and both were very much involved in community. And of course, in a small island, you will know this. People like teachers carry a sort of they carry they hold a particular place in communities. And so there were always people in my house coming to see Teacher Eleanor about one thing or the other. Anything from a cup of flour to somebody needs to go to secondary school. And so I grew up with people always coming and going. And I think very early on, I recognized that us girls had a bit of a problem. My parents had 4 children. I was the second daughter. And then a boy was born, and all of a sudden, the whole world shifted around this boy. And, although he was, my parents were such that he was taught to cook and so on, but still there were these things, let him do that. You're a girl, you go do this. I mean, my father had boats, for example. I wanted to go sail. I wanted to go work on the boats. I wanted to be a sailor. And he said, no, 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 no. That just was not possible. And so, throughout school and going off to college, going back to Monserrat, and then leaving again and going back everywhere I went, I found myself working with women, working on issues of safety for women and so on. And in the process, all along, I've also been writing, and a lot of my writing is, in fact, about women and girls and how society treats us. So it has come from growing up in a small community where people's issues are front and center. You get into people's lives, and you either figure out or get to understand what it is that you can do to make a difference. And that was where I saw mine. That's where mine came up.
Okay. And you, Senator?
So when I was growing up, I was the leader. I talked a lot. I had a lot to share. And
No,
depending
not
on
you.
where I was either appropriate or inappropriate. I was naturally good at school, but that also created challenges in that I wasn't really sure where to focus all of my attention. And so, if you're smart, you do accountancy, or you'll become a doctor, or you'll do something, in the science field. And so I thought that I was going to become a doctor. And then I went off to university, and I was speaking with one of my professors, and she said, have you ever considered a leadership type role within a medical setting without having to be a doctor? And I said, you know what, I didn't think of that. I just thought I wanted the doctor title and I'd be good with that. And so had some more conversations, took some more business classes, and found that I actually liked the idea of human resources. And so for me, the HR function gave me a backdoor view into how it all comes together, how it all works, how we get the right people for the right job, how we get the wrong people out of the room if this isn't ideal for them, and then how do we grow and develop a business or an idea and take it to the next level. So when I graduated from university, I came back to Bermuda, and I was lucky enough to have joined Expertise, which is, I guess, one of the largest, smallest outsourced companies in Bermuda. And so I was placed as a management consultant on the HR and immigration team. And so delved into all things, handbook and job descriptions and benchmarking exercises and, company startup business formation and so many things. But I always found that I was mostly drawn to the business development side. And I would always watch as the partners, came together each day. They shared tips. They talked about, who would be going on maternity leave. Where can we stick some temps, or, what are they doing over there? And so all those experiences kind of have driven me to where I am today. After Expertise, I spent some time in some private companies. I was at the bank for a bit. I was with the Akon Airport Constructors, which is a bit controversial, but it was a great learning opportunity. And after that, I joined the government in HR capacity. Now that I decided to run, obviously, I'm no longer able to serve in that capacity. But most recently, I've actually found myself in the middle of supporting, I guess, the COVID-19 response. And so in my day-to-day work, I'm dealing with the lab who's, processing the samples. I'm dealing with the persons who are providing the tests to locals, to the travelers, to all the other persons. And so what I enjoy most is just having my hand on the pulse of, all the moving pieces. And I think I have a unique perspective because I've been in the public sector, I've been in the private sector, and I kind of see, I guess, the highs and lows of both. And although sometimes it gets frustrating that, the red tape of government, the bureaucracy, I think I have a general appreciation that still gives me the hope that we can do more, that things can get better. And so I'm also in a transitional phase in that I'm doing my master's in public health. And so for the next 5 years or so, that's kind of going to be my focus. There's a shortage of leaders, Bermudian leaders, particularly in the healthcare industry. And I'm looking forward to kind of filling that gap, so to speak.
All right. And over to you now, cousin.
Alrighty. So I guess my day job is what you're asking for, and
I
I'm
said
basically
your profession.
profession. Okay, well, I'm a project manager by profession, engineer by education. That's how I like to introduce myself. But from childhood, I was always curious about how things worked. My mom also was a teacher. My dad was a mechanic, heavy equipment operator, and I was in the middle of two boys. So I'm a middle child of three. And, it was dolly house or riding the bike, going swimming, going boating. So I'm like Shirley, we weren't trying to be in the house.
Yes.
So but it worked out in that I can look back and see that there was balance because my mother was very supportive in that she didn't say, well, a girl's place is in the house. She allowed me to have the freedom to, yes, you're going to learn to take care of house, to cook, to clean, to wash, but so did my brothers. So everybody, it was equal opportunity in my household growing up. So when I went off to college, I was undecided for the first year, but I knew I wanted to do something with maths and science because, that's what I had studied in my last 2 years at high school and, loved it. Some strange reason, it just was about, how things work. So I got into project management as part of my master's degree in industrial engineering. And when I returned home, I had to work for government. So I did a stint, I would say, at the Ministry of Finance in the project support services unit. This was something we were just putting into existence as a way to better manage our capital program. So it was a really exciting time, I would think. And a lot of things were happening at the time. So after 8 years was when I decided to go out into the private sector and work as a project management consultant. So I have my own company and that's what I do. But it is,
Okay.
I think through my experience in the service was where, again, as an advisor to the decision makers, you start to see some of the issues or the shortcomings, as it were, in terms of why things aren't the way we'd like to see them. And it really boiled down to, the kind and the quality of the decisions that were being made. So for me in 2011 was when I decided, I want to move from being just an advisor to being a decision maker. Because for me, that's what getting into politics is about. Because again, we want to make the decisions that are going to affect the quality of life for everybody, not just some, but and not just for now, because one of the things that I see as a shortcoming is we don't think enough about legacy. We don't think about enough about, our grandparents thought about us having a better life than they had. So we have to think the same way for the next 2, 3 generations down. So with that in mind, I threw my hat in the ring in 2011. I was unsuccessful, but I did it again in 2015 as well as 2019. So and I'm gonna keep at it. People keep encouraging you and saying,
Yeah.
don't give up because the country needs you. So it's something for me where I want to do it not just to say I've done it, but understanding the importance of I would say what I bring to the leadership of the country. So it's key, and we're gonna get into later on in terms of how the state of affairs, so to speak, for women in politics in the Virgin Islands, because it's a project I'm actually working on now with a documentary. And I'll share more about that a little bit later on in terms of, looking at where we've come from when the first woman actually ran for office up until the last elections in 2019 and what else we would like to see happen. So that's how
Okay.
I fell into it, Chris.
All right. So the gentlemen are going to alternate questions. So Eden is going to speak now, ask a few next round of questions.
All right.
That was amazing. The how the diverse backgrounds is just very inspiring. I have to say, it's incredible. The next question we have up here, going to Madam Speaker, Ms. Shirley. Which women most inspired you to take up the mantle of leadership? Who were your mentors as women or your inspirations?
I looked at that and I couldn't settle on one. Every time I get asked that question, I think it changes. I have always, ever since I was a child, I've always looked at people. I can remember my parents had gone to England. My parents were part of the Windrush generation. They went to England, then they came back. When they went to England, a lot of their friends also went, but their friends didn't come back. until, you know, we were older, they'd come back for vacation. So, and I'd be at the house, it's Christmas, and, you know, there are these aunties and godmothers and whoever else. And I used to watch these women and wonder about their lives, you know, wonder how they lived, what they did, how they spent their lives, what England was like. Because also my parents, my parents actually were very politically active, and it was at the time when there was the whole anti-colonialist push. So in my house, Britain, my parents had gone to Britain to go to school and then come back. That was it. Didn't want to live there. So I grew up with this thing, and I'm wondering, how do people live in England? What is life like? And I remember in particular, there was one. She came back, and she was working as a journalist in England. She's writing for the newspapers and so on. And she had a very sort of African-centered perspective. And I listened to her talk, and I remember having a conversation with my mom, because she had a name. They called her Yaya. You know, that was her island name. But when she went to England, they used the proper name, all right? And I wanted to call her Yaya. And my mother said, no, you don't. You can't do that. But I was so amazed and so mesmerized by this woman. And I think she was where I got the notion that you could actually write things that make a difference to people's lives. Yeah. And then there was this other woman who was very much interested, very much involved in festival. She used to do costumes, and she was also a designer. She'd do gowns for the Queen show and so on. And I used to watch this woman from afar. During the day, she worked in the post office, and she dressed the way you dress to work in a post office. And then, you know, any other time she was, you know, glitter and glam and all that stuff. And I couldn't, again, I was mesmerized by how these women how she managed to be so different and combine them. And then finally I did actually start, when I got a little bit older, I started going to her dance class, and that was just, but I think overall it was mostly my mother and my grandmother. My grandmother was born in 1904. And she and my grandfather, she was Anglican and my grandfather was Seventh-day Adventist. And I asked her one day, how come you didn't go to church with that? How come you didn't? She said, no. I had my own religion. When he asked me to marry him, I told him, if you think I'm going to change my religion because I marry you, then don't marry me. And can you imagine? She must have that must have been in the 1930s or something. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So these are the women I grew up around, and these are the women who inform who I am for the most part. Yes.
Thank you. Fantastic stories. Senator Hodgson, who were the inspirations in your life, mentors as women?
So when I think about, I guess, women mentors growing up, I think that first and foremost, my mother wasn't a frontline leader in the traditional sense, but to me, my mother was just the best example of leadership that I've ever seen, especially servant leadership. No matter what it was that she involved herself in, she was always there to serve. And so as children, we would always get frustrated. We couldn't understand why we're still waiting for our mom and it's time to go, or she's on the phone helping someone else's children and, you know, we'd love to go somewhere. But now I see that her staff, that the people around her, that they all value the attention that she constantly gives to them. I would also say that growing up, I was generally surrounded by a bunch of strong women. And so my father's family is Bermudian, but my mother's family is actually overseas. And so while we would spend holidays, typically holidays overseas, I was mostly obviously around my father's family. And so that was my grandmother, that was my aunts, that was my Aunt Eva, that was my Aunt Laverne. And so growing up, you always heard how strong these women were. Depending on the room you were in, they were either totally impressed or just totally over, the women that they were. And they actually both recently passed away. And so having stepped into this space at a time where I kind of lost the two people who could have been my mentors, it tells me that I need to stop and make sure that my daughter and that the future generations really tap in to the source of their legacy, their families, even spending time. When we were younger, we were so close knit. We all grew up in the same neighborhood. But, life happens, people move, and, priorities shift. But the women in my family, they carried themselves well, they spoke well, but it was always their caring personality, their kindness, that I guess gave endless stories. And so seeing women just stand up and shift the energy in a room, to me, that's what leadership is all about. You don't have to necessarily be an MP. You don't necessarily have to be, on the front line. But when you show up, when you empower people, when you support people, that's the kind of women I grew up around, essentially.
Awesome.
Yeah. Sorry for your loss, Senator. That's very impactful.
No worries. You learn so much. Sometimes it's a little too late, right? But the stories are endless, and so I'm now finding myself going back and asking all those stories that I was tired of hearing on Christmas and on Easter. And so you live and you learn, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess it brings importance of legacy into focus even more so. Yeah. And Ms. Shaina, who were the women who inspired you getting to this point in your life and as mentors?
Similar to Shirley and Arianna, it's the people in my family. My mom, as a teacher, she also was involved in the Girl Guides Association. And again, she started off as a guider, and then next thing you know, she's the commissioner. So it's kind of, example set, example followed, where it's like you don't shy away from the responsibility, because oftentimes people like positions, but they don't like the work. But it was something where I grew up watching her, come home every day after school, take care of us, and then sit down at 1 o'clock in the morning to do her class prep. So even for me, again, persons know me, I'm sending emails 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, when we're working on different projects, or, trying to get something done, because that's the work ethic that I had. And I also remember one of my aunts, she was actually married to my father's brother. So she was an in-law. But again, she was the type of woman that she was active and at the top of her game in whatever she participated in, Lusage Smith. And I just, it was funny because I looked up to her without thinking of her being a mentor. But I remember we had a breakfast for her 50th birthday, and I decided to give a toast. And that was the one thing that came to mind, is like, I really have been sitting down and emulating her, all these years, and not realizing that, I've been learning from her in the way that she's been living her life, and understanding the importance of, having those types of role models. Because I think in the Caribbean, we don't think of role models as much. And even, back then in those times, to say that you have people who, kind of are guiding you and helping you intentionally. It's like it's happening unintentionally all the time. But definitely family members were the heaviest and the most influential in growing up and being to this stage. And, just a support, because in anything that I've ever attempted or been involved in, they've always been there cheering me on from the side, to say, give it your best, and give it your all in whatever it is you're doing.
Okay. Thank you, ladies. Again,
Wait, I had one addendum question for Miss Shirley. What kind of dance did you get involved in? I was curious about that when you were mentioning it. Was it?
It was creative dance. It was modern dance.
Oh, okay.
Yes, she did. One of the things I remember we did once was we redid the Jesus Christ Superstar musical. Yeah, and she did a lot of Caribbean dances. She did a lot of Caribbean music also to make up her dances. Yes.
Awesome.
Yeah, very awesome. All right, over to you, Chris. Sorry.
All right, no problem, no problem.
Very interesting.
For everyone's knowledge, Eden is an entertainer, so these things he has a distinct passion for. So shout out once again to Channel 82. I'm getting quite a few WhatsApp from people in Bermuda who said that they're watching us and they're loving this show. So if everyone can just give a shout out to Channel 82 right now, Lemon Woods, and the people, and to the people of Bermuda.
Thank you,
Awesome.
Channel 82 in
Thanks
Bermuda.
for tuning in.
All right. So I'm gonna be the bad guy on this question.
Uh-huh.
What led all of you are very successful in your professional lives. What led you to say, you know what? I'm gonna jump into the dirty and murky waters of politics.
Uh,
Yeah, why would we do
Don't
that
don't
to
jump all
ourselves,
at
right?
once.
yes.
Don't jump
Why
all
would you
at
want
once.
to?
I'm very
Well,
interested in this one.
I mean, you could have just played it safe and stayed in your professional lane, right? I know that sounds sexist. Stayed in the professional lane, but no, you said, "Hey, I want to do better for the country, people of my
Yeah.
island. Let me jump into politics." So we start with you, Madam Speaker.
Well, like I was born into politics. I mean, I used to stay up. I used
So
to stay up.
so point of order, you're using DNA as your defense.
Sorry, if what?
You're using DNA as your defense.
Well, DNA, yeah, both and environment, nature and nurture.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I have always been very much interested in is languages, is communication, and I didn't know that at the time. I know that now, but what I remember is, being a small child, and all hours of the night. I mean, when my father ran for office first, I was 6 or 7 years old, and there were men, mostly men, in the house all hours of the night. There's these conversations going on, and I'd stay up and listen. I'd stay awake and listen, and then my mother used to help my father, write his speeches, and I was the one who used to, look for the synonyms and look for what does this word mean and sort to help her. But when I at one point I had thought I wanted to be active in politics, and my father said just what you said. It's a dirty girl, no, get dirty game. No, none of my children get involved. No, and he sent me off to England to school. And I came back, went to work for the government, and I have my own notions about how things are supposed to work. And for me, again, the idea that people talk to one another, you talk things out, you go over things, you sit together and you trash them out, and make things work, especially in offices like this. And so I got myself in trouble with the government, and the government said, no, we don't want you working for us anymore. And so I went off to do my master's degree, and then I was going to stay away. I really had to stay away. And then my brother was running for office for his second term, and he said, come help me now, come help me organize my campaign. And so I went home for what should have been a month or so, and ended up organizing the, can you hear me still? Because I lost sight of me. Okay.
No, go ahead.
Ended up organizing because they were starting a new party, and so I pulled the party together, became the chair of the party. And
point of clarification, Madam Speaker.
yes.
Did I hear you say you pulled the party together and
Yes.
you became the chair? Okay.
Yes.
I just wanted to make sure I heard that correctly.
Yeah, I got home and there were all these men who had been meeting for a few months before I got home, and was still in complete disarray. And they asked me to help sort them out, and I helped sort them out, which meant basically organizing roles and responsibilities and so on. And I was going back and forth from the US for like a year or so, pulling them together. And then when it was time to actually run, when it was campaign time, then I just got into it. And I found I really like behind the scenes. I actually like, I like politics. I like organizing the campaigns, the rallies and so on. But then I had actually also expected to leave again, but then they offered me the office of speaker. And just like Shaina and Arianna talk about, if you are offered, if you come by, if you earn, if you're offered the opportunity to serve at a certain level, especially given the needs that our region has, it was kind of hard to say no. And plus at that time I was also, sort of in transition with my work. My dad had just died. We'd sold the company I'd helped build and so on. So it was easy. But the big thing was the opportunity to really get in a position where it could make a difference, in leadership position that could make a difference. And so I stayed.
So I have a supplementary question, Madam
Yes,
Speaker.
sir. Yes, sir.
I heard you say they offered me the role of speaker. Now, for us in Bermuda,
Mm.
a speaker has to be an elected member of parliament. Could you
Mm.
explain to the people, for those in different jurisdictions, how people are offered the role of
Yeah.
speaker?
Yeah, but in Montserrat, I think probably in Bivia and some of the others, I
Yeah.
think that's, yes, the party that wins, the government decides on who should be the speaker. And they have different ways. In the party, we interviewed people. Literally, I interviewed people for the office, and then somebody said, no, you realize it has to be you, right? But then when you go to, so the party, and then the premier um nominates. And in Montserrat, the tradition is that the leader of government nominates, and the leader of the opposition seconds the nomination, and then it's voted on in parliament.
Mm.
So when the party said, we'd like it to be you, then they had to do the conversation with the opposition, and then call for a vote in parliament and so on. Yeah.
All right. All right. Thank you very much.
Mhm.
No, over to you, Senator Hudson. What made you get into politics 1 year ago this week?
Exactly all that time ago. Genuinely seems like a long time ago. Nevertheless, last year, I believe it was during one of the lockdowns or the outbreaks or something of that sort. I remembered the finance minister during a press conference. I can't recall if he was asked whether or not they had engaged younger persons, or if he just came forward and said that they were looking for young people who were interested in joining sort of a junior economic advisory committee. And the goal of this committee would be to look at economic stimulation post-COVID, although we're still, trying to see when post-COVID actually, begins. And so I spoke to my peers and I said, you know what, I'm so frustrated. I have to figure out how to get in. So I actually reached out to another MP and I said, how do I reach the finance minister? And so I got the email address. I also got his aide's address. I emailed them both. I said, listen, I heard that you were looking for persons who are interested. I'm definitely interested. Essentially, please let me know, when and where, and we can get this going. And so after about 2 weeks, I think perhaps a week, I hadn't gotten a response to my email. And so I'm one of those persons who definitely follows up just to see, what's going on, what's next. So I reached out and I said, hello, I had applied to be part of this committee. Just wanted to know if you had decided on members and, what would be next steps. And after a few days, I got an email back and said that actually they had filled the spots and that there was essentially no need for my assistance. And so typically I would have, written back kind of colorfully and said, can you explain why I wasn't selected or what have you? But I decided to gracefully say, okay, that's fine. But then a week later, I actually got a call and they said that, hey, a spot had opened up. Would you be interested? And so my pride was kind of like, no way. But then there was just that little voice at the back of my head that said, do it. And so I was working in government at the time, up on probably the 4th floor, and the meetings were down at the 2nd floor. So I said, well, this is perfect. We can make it happen. And so we had a few meetings. We came up with a presentation. I'm typically the person who likes to lead out in the presentation, but I missed that meeting. And so I couldn't put my name forth. And I said, that's fine. I'll shine in the question and answer period. And so we come to the day where we're meeting with the cabinet. We had our presentation. And at the end, the premier nudged me and said, what are you up to? What's going on? And I said that, right now I'm kind of frustrated working in government. I want to feel like I can make more of a difference. I want to see that something doesn't make sense and, have the ability to change it. I don't want to just keep doing things because that's the way we've always done them. And so the premier told me to, reach out and that we'd connect. And I believe it was literally the next day, his chief of staff reached out and said that the premier wanted to connect. I was thinking
Who's
maybe
his, excuse
new
me,
job
who's his
offer.
chief of staff?
The premier's chief of staff,
What's his name?
Senator Owen Darrell. He's
Okay, all
actually
right,
my
thank you.
colleague now. But at the time, just to go a bit back further, I believe in 2019, I had applied to be part of an entrepreneurship accelerator program. And so that was the first time that I was kind of introduced to the premier in a formal setting. And so ever since then, we would just say hello, we would keep it pushing. And then I had some issues where I decided to reach out, we reconnected, I spoke with Senator Darrell, and then 2 years later, we're kind of in this space. And so he calls me in. I had no idea what the meeting would be about, but the premier calls, you go, right? And so I show up. We, started with a bit of small talk, and by the end of that conversation, the premier was asking me if I'd be interested in running. And at that point, I'm wondering what he could possibly talking about. Running what? There's an election in about a month. You're definitely not talking about running in that election. And so I sat there, and of course, there were a million thoughts going through my head. But really, the biggest challenge for me was, what would my mother think? And so, as I mentioned earlier, my mom's a non-Bermudian, but she'd married a Bermudian. She was never a supporter of any particular party. So it wasn't that she'd be upset that I chose this particular party. I just wasn't generally sure how she would take it. And then the second thing on my mind was that, hey, what would my bio look like? I just graduated a few years ago. I don't have the endless accolades yet. And what would I look like standing next to, all these people who have done such great things for our country, locally, overseas, I didn't feel that I was equipped for it. And so I went out and I asked them to give me just some time to think about it. I reached out to about 5 persons who I usually reach out to if I, am having a bit of a dilemma. One of them said, definitely do not do it. You're going to be the token woman, and it's no sense you even getting, involved in that mess. And then I spoke to one of my friend's mothers, and she said, are you silly? You better take it. If you don't enjoy it, you can say no, you can drop out, and you never have to deal with it again. But at least, try it out. And so the last person I called was my mother. And I said, I think I may run. And she's like, run what? What are you talking about? And I said, well, I was kind of asked if I'd be interested in politics and, running in the election. And she said, well, they always said that you do something like this. And so, it went over better than I thought. I had the support of my mother, and really that's all you need. So I reached back out, I think, if not the next day, some hour in the morning. And I said that essentially, yes, I would be interested. A month later, the election came. Obviously, I wasn't in a safe seat, which obviously I knew. I wasn't successful, obviously, in the general election, but I was then selected to serve in the Senate. And so literally, it just all happened so fast. I was grateful for the opportunity, excited to be learning something new, and just excited about what could really happen. And so now I'm at a place where I'm saying, well, what's next? What do the next 5 years look like? For me, I guess I'm the youngest in the room right now, but I genuinely and truly look forward to the time where there are other young people in the room, and other young women in the room. And so that's kind of how I've gotten where I am today.
Okay, thank you. And finally, but not leastly, is that a word, leastly? Mrs. Smith Archer, you've ran 3 times.
Yes, sir.
You sound like someone who, I don't know, you sound like you like politics.
No. It started off as one of those things where it was a challenge that basically was put to me. Like I said, I had actually just resigned from the public service in 2011, and that year was going to be the next election cycle. And it was a group of us, like-minded young people that had been meeting, and we were dissatisfied with basically how the country was being governed. So we decided we were going to get together and actually start a new party. But as these things go sometimes with parties, as we know, it didn't come together as it was intending to. But we decided to persevere and continue because we felt we needed to, put a new message out there and talk a different philosophy
Mhm.
as far as how we view politics and what it is we want to do. So I went through that. Second time around 2015, I was invited to join the NDP. And after much long thought, because again, my key thing in terms of even getting involved in politics was about, dissatisfaction with the established parties. So there are basically two parties within the Virgin Islands right now, two main parties. There have
What
been
are they? What are those two
they're
parties?
the Virgin Islands Party and the National Democratic Party. So the group now that I ran with them as a first district candidate, actually. So I started off as a territorial and then ran first district. But in the initial stages, again, when we started off, it was again, wanting to see better for the country, wanting to see a different message, and decided to go forward. My mother was a little bit harder to convince the
Mhm.
second time around. It was sort of as she gave me permission the first time around, but the second time around, she was kind of discouraging people who were encouraging me. She would say to them, she still needs to give me some grandchildren. Y'all take it easy. And it was funny because it was a day I was with her in town, and one of the supporters came by and was talking with us. And then is when I realized she had this conversation with them at another occasion. And I just laughed. I was like, Mom, the grandchildren are going to come. Don't worry. This doesn't stop the show. But it was one of those things where people view politics as
Yes.
it's a man's game. And it's something that women can't tolerate. But I think for me as a project manager, I already worked in what would be deemed, a male dominated field. So I wasn't intimidated by that. I think one of the things that struck me though was how much people, including women, weren't so necessarily more supportive of women getting
Yeah.
involved in politics.
Mhm.
After all these years, because the first woman that ran for office was in 1971, and we as Caribbean people very conservative. Again, women have their place, and it's in the kitchen. That's literally what they had. I was heard, that they said to the first female candidate. So, but we persevered and have been active behind the scenes from then till now, and plan to stay active on some level, because I think it's important again for there to be equal representation, as it were, not just in the parliament or the House of Assembly as we refer to it, but also in the cabinet, because again, this is where the decisions are made that affect our everyday life. So we can't take it for granted that I could call an elected representative and tell them what I think they should do and think that is going to happen. Sometimes you actually have to get in there and get it done. So the men have forged on, and I guess have tried their best over the years. But I think they need some support and assistance
It's
now.
so true. Yes, they do.
So that's
We
what we're
agree on
here
that.
to do, to bring
No, what you mean they need support and assistance? No, they
they
always have
they
needed.
always did.
Okay.
Well, it was a patriarchal society. If we're gonna be honest and have a real conversation tonight, we know that has always been part of it, because
Mhm.
women have always been capable of being in positions of
Absolutely.
power and responsibility. But our patriarchal society decided which positions that women should pursue, and what discourages. So imagine me being an engineer and a project manager back in the early 90s. Sometimes I would show up to meetings, and it's like when I say that I'm the project manager, it's kind of like, oh, okay. You're like, yeah, I'm the woman in charge. This is my show. So this is what we're gonna see happen here
Yeah.
today. So yeah, I didn't shy. So because of that, I didn't shy away from it. I knew, what politics engaged in, because I've worked with campaigns before I got involved actually on my own. So the rough and tumble, as people refer to it as. But after elections are over, there's a business of running country,
Mhm.
and that's what I'm more so interested in. So it's kind of like the murky waters are a pathway that you kind of have to
Yes.
cross that bridge, so to speak.
Yeah, of
And
course, that's the River Jordan.
yes, So once we cross the River Jordan, we hit the promised land, then we could get down
We can
to
go.
the real business. That's what we're here to do. So, it was one of those things where you gotta be fearless, or I should say more so courageous,
Mhm.
in taking it on as a female because of our culture or how we've been socialized growing up to want to break those glass ceilings, as it were, just to even get in the door, much less at the table. So
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
kind of what my journey has been like.
All right. Thank you. I think Eden wants to. I think Eden can tell us that we have an honored guest viewing.
Yes, we have the elected representative for West Bay Central, Catherine Ebanks Wilkes, is watching from over here in Cayman, and she
Uh-huh.
just recently won a seat in the April election. So hugely thankful that she is tuning
And
in. And
and how many times has she ran before?
she ran in 2017 and got a very important conversation started in what I did not deem as a loss. I deemed it as a success and a good showing. But this was her year, and we all knew it up here in West Bay, and she is doing a fantastic job.
Yeah, I got
She's
a
incredible leader.
yeah. I watched. Just for those who don't know, for the Cayman Islands general election, they have a series of debates leading up to the election for each of their 19 districts. And I watched the debate with Catherine Ebanks Wilkes against, I would say, a potential relative, Captain Eugene Ebanks. Um, and
Not
within
sure.
5 minutes, I knew, like, yeah, she's got this. There's no way the people of West Bay cannot vote for this woman. Like, I wish I was a Caymanian that day, so I could, if I had to cast one vote, it would have been for her.
I wish I lived in Central. Luckily, my mother is in. My mother actually signed her was one of the people who signed her nomination. So she was there ardently supporting, and we were able to help from our constituency here in West Bay North as well to support her. And she's an incredible human being, an incredible leader.
All right, so
This is it's a great segue into the next question that's up, actually, because Senator Hodgson mentioned the thought that sometimes you end up being the token woman in the political arena, or there's a perception of that. And Shaina, you talked about it, about this being a man's world, male dominated. So the next question is about just describing the politics of your island, and do women politicians get much support from parties and the communities at large? Now, you've spoken to that a little bit, and feel free to expand on that by all means. But do you see this evolving? Do you see a next step being taken of where you're not so much just trying to break the glass ceiling, but there's a real push of women influencing what is happening in the political arena?
That's a tough one, Eden. It's in Monserrat. It's mixed. It's very people are ambivalent about women in these offices, and so when a woman presents herself for political leadership, she gets everything that the men get. She gets all the same pushback. But of course, there are the other things that are thrown at her just because she's a woman. Stories get made up, and you can make up stories. Stories get made up about men, but men, don't just roll right off their backs. But those kinds of stories stick with women. Because we are still such a conservative region. Those things, there's certain things women just not allowed to or permitted to be. And so you'll hear people say, yes, we need women in this place. I mean, I ran in the last election, and everybody said, yes, we need you, we need women like you, and afterwards I said, listen, everybody who told me they voted for me had voted for me, and I've got every single vote in the country, right? But no, they it doesn't work like that. And one of the one of the times when it came most clearly to me was as speaker. I had an issue, we had a disciplinary issue with a member of parliament, and I was the leader of parliament, and it was up to me to make the decision and communicate it and enforce it. And men told me, "You did the right thing, you made the right decision, but it should have been a man doing it."
Mm.
Yes, it should have been a man. It's not supposed. Women are not supposed to do these things.
So there's a severe double standard, even though you're already in the position and holding the position honorably.
Absolutely.
Wow.
Yes. And that's the challenge. And I find that you have that to some degree everywhere, but I think in the smaller communities, smaller territories, it carries a whole lot more weight. I mean, in Monserrat, for example, we don't have such a problem with, for example, violence against women in public office, or it's the pushback is verbal. It's more insidious. It's deeper. It's more underground. But then women continue doing it. And the first woman who elected to office in Monserrat was in 1958 or something. So it's not new, but always. I mean, I don't think we've ever had more than two women in any legislature, and we have 9 elected members plus the FS and the AG. And so all along there have been women, 1 or 2, but yet you're really not. It's not really accepted. It's not. Yeah, the and it's not just the men. I think it was Shaina who said this earlier. It's not just the men who push back. It's the women. Women who tell me, "Shirley, no, let the men do that. That's something for men to do." And interestingly enough, I'm not talking about women like my grandmother and so on. I'm talking about there are young women too who feel the same way.
Yeah.
There are young men who still feel that way, and that's so. On the one hand, I'm hopeful, and I see more women getting more vocal and more involved, and so yes. But on the other hand, I see there's a lot of work left to do.
How do we evolve that in small territories? How do we get this into more even ground here?
A lot of it is just talking. A lot of it is talking. It's educating people. It's having conversations over and over and over that I want to say this, non-threatening. It's having men understand that
it's not a takeover.
It's not a takeover. We're here to help you. We're here to help you. And if you let us help you, you will do so much better.
Yeah.
It'll be good for you too. I think that's it.
And somebody just actually posed a question along those lines, Eden. I just popped it up, where they're asking, what are our thoughts about an all-woman parliament in the future?
Yay!
I recently actually wrote an article about this. Persons can go and check it out on my Facebook page, because we had, I think it was International Women's Day. Right, a speaker gave a presentation and she was talking about having an all-female parliament because the men are not holding their own. Let me put it so, right?
Yeah.
So it was something where I pondered about it for a while, and then I said, you know what, this thing really has to be a balanced conversation, because that's where it all started in the first place. So gender equity came up because you don't have equal representation of the sexes. So we would be doing an injustice, so to speak, by pushing the men out. I think this is my position on it. Pushing the men out completely to say, well, let the women take over for a while and see how well they do. And then what? If they don't do well, then what? Who do we switch them out for? So I said to them, I say good leadership is good leadership regardless of if you're a man or a woman. And that is what we should be focusing on at the end of the day. And understand and recognize that when you have good women leaders, that you give Jack their jacket, you will give Jill a blouse, so to speak, because she can do the job just as well and maybe even better than Jack, because she's a good leader.
Yeah.
And for me, I would want us to always, maintain the level of balance, because if we're going for equity, let's keep maintain equity. And we're looking for good leadership across the board, from wherever it comes from.
I would also say that as an HR professional, it's just about getting the right person for the right job. And so it doesn't matter whether that's a male or female. But I would love to see, or at least be interesting to see what, an all-woman parliament would look like. What type of decisions would they make? What would they do differently? Would they do anything drastically different? And so I think it would definitely be an interesting thing to see.
We to see, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
And again, if it happens that, the women that ran for a particular election, all of them were elected, then I hope it's on the merit that, they're the women that are equipped. These are the leaders that are equipped to go in and do the job and do the job, but not to just vote on the basis of gender strictly, because then that maintains the status quo in a sense, where, when the men get opportunity, then they're going to vote for just the men,
All men.
And disregard if there are women that are on tickets that should be given the opportunity to serve in that capacity. So.
And I think Eden, that one of the major impediments is one of the major impediments is how we do politics. As long as politics continues to be seen as murky and dirty and kind of unsavory, it's going to continue to be, you shouldn't get involved in that. I mean, I actually had a woman say to me a year or so ago, she said, she wanted me to do some work with her in Monserrat. And she said, you ran for politics. I could not possibly do anything. I could not possibly do something like that. And she said it with such disdain, because there's a culture shift. There's a shift that has to be undertaken about how we approach politics. And we have to see politics as a profession, as something real and solid that people do, that you prepare for, and that is done in a certain way. We have these democracies that say anybody, I mean, literally in Monserrat, you can run for office as long as you have not been declared bankrupt or you have not been declared lunatic. And they use the word.
That's how old it is.
Yeah. And it's all well and good. That's all well and good. We like that, anybody can have the opportunity. But we have to, until we get to the point where we realize that there's a strategy and a system and a philosophy and a science and so on behind leadership and so on, this won't, we'll have difficulty with that.
Yeah.
So, as long as they keep doing quote unquote the dirty politics, the one where, you slip some money under there and you vote because is your brother's sister's friend, all that kind of stuff, until we get objective and clear about our politics is about leadership, is about leading our countries from here to there, and therefore we need to take step 1, 2, we need to do this, that, and the other. And these are the people with the skills, with the experience, with the abilities. Let's vote for them. Until we get to do that, women are going to continue to have a hard time.
Yeah. Definitely a perception shift is necessary.
Yeah.
Can I just add one more thing? I think both of ladies have said, the importance of conversation, starting the conversation, just starting to talk about it. And so I think women are often challenged by the concept that we may not be able to have it all. And so I think it also reminds me of the idea of work-life balance. Like, what really is that? And so I think that when we support women, when we rally around them, when we show them the support they need, even if that's with their kids or with their home lives, I think it puts them in a position to take the step and to take the leap and to trust that they'll have the support along the way to continue the journey. But many of us don't talk about it, or we shy away from the conversations because oftentimes we don't have the solution. And I guess there's a lot of conversation about, does that look like, building a system that forces us, to put women in the room? Is that necessarily the right route to take? And so I know for myself, I used to hate group work, but then, you grow up and you learn about, the benefits of collaboration and the diversity at the table. You always come up with a better idea. And so if we can all come together to not only communicate, but to support each other in the journey, I think we'll all have a better experience in the political arena.
Yeah, and we got some interesting comments coming in. One person dropped in talking about mentoring is important. So that's one of the things where for those of us that are involved on whatever level, it's important that we are encouraging our peers as well as younger women to get involved. And this is one of my rascals here in the Virgin Islands, Eden. Angel. She said it's important for political leadership platforms to make an effort in shifting the narrative related to women in politics. These conversations matter for our future women leaders. And again, in the article that I wrote, I said that one of the things that I want to see for the Virgin Islands before I close my eyes is a female premier or prime minister. And be committed to that, because it is a process. It is going to be a journey, but it is something that, once we make that effort, it is possible.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you very much. That last rascal who was saying that mentoring is crucial is my leader, my wife. So great to see all these awesome points chiming in. Do you think? Do you favor? I mean, even I understand it's tricky for elected roles to say, okay, we're going to have 50% women and 50% men, but for appointed roles, like a group that I'm involved in, Amplify Cayman, we have a largely female core group, logistics group, but very diverse as far as ages, backgrounds, perspectives, and I find that it makes for amazingly positive progress and real eye-opening. Oh, I never thought of that. Boom, you know what? Let's take that direction, because that's do you think that we should facilitate that in the political world to achieve balance?
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. There needs to be diversity in every sector. And and I'm glad you said that, Eden, because one of the things that's important, becoming more and more important, is the interest in engaging younger and younger people in the political process, and that has to happen. And we have to facilitate and encourage that. But then you hear, we probably did it. I'm sure I did it when I was 20, and the old people leave me alone, but but the point is, in reality, you need the whole spectrum. You need the energy and the fearlessness, if you will, that younger folk bring. When you're 20 and 25 and 30, there's certain things I'm just going to do. But you also need the tempering influence from the experience will say, you want, maybe not, try this other thing instead. Look, so you need that, and you need that both when you have men and when you have women. You need it all across the board. So yes, it's a very good thing, Eden. It really is.
Over to you, Chris. Thank you so much. I think you're muted.
Yeah, sorry. There's a comment came in from a lady, Dawn Simmons. May you highlight that for a minute, please? Her question is mentorship offered to women who show an interest in politics, which is an interesting question because it's a segue into my next double question. But for clarity, Miss Dawn Simmons is actually the chairperson. I use that non-gender word, person, the chairwoman of our political party in Bermuda, the Progressive Labor Party. And she is a person that has worked in the party. Her whole family has worked in the party most of her life, and she knows the Constitution better than she knows how to spell her own last name. And I say that to say that it highlights that the women, at least in our party, which Senator Hodgson can attest to, the women are the backbone of the government, the political government in Bermuda. Without the women, our party would not be government, right? That's I can assure you of that, right?
Tell the truth. Tell the truth.
Mhm.
I wouldn't be an MP without women's first of all supporting me in my run and voting for me, and then support me as I've gone along as an MP. So I'm quite sure it mirrors in other uh, islands that the women are the ones that are the actual backbones. As the speaker said earlier, some guys called her and asked her to organize a party, put together a party, become the chairperson of that party. And then later on says, you know, the speaker got to be the speaker. So I just want to publicly give thanks to Chairwoman Dawn Simmons for all her advocacy over the years for our party.
Mhm.
And no, I shouldn't just say our party, for the people of our country. And she comes from the wrong side of the country. You might like her Eden because she comes from what we call the west side of Bermuda. Bermuda and Cayman Islands are basically shaped the same. So she comes from what they call the west, right? So you'll love her, Eden. She's one of your people.
Me too. I'm from West End. Remember that.
Yes, exactly. My point. My point. So the next question, as we come near to a close,
Hmm.
because we, in the interest of time, we have to condense the answers if possible. First of all, Madam Speaker, uh, have you this is a loaded question. Have you encouraged and mentored other women?
I do. I still do. It's something I've always done. It's something I did when I was working with the party. It's something I still do because I'm still involved in. I still get involved. I'm still involved in politics. Let's put it this way. And so yes, I'm always involved inviting young people to go join the youth parliament and encouraging other women to run and to get involved and sort of working with them to help them form a different perspective on the whole political process and see it as something, not just something they can do, but something that actually is in itself, it's honorable. It's an honorable thing to do, to sit in an elected office of your country and make decisions that affect people's lives in the most intimate parts, you know, and so yeah, it's something that I take very seriously, and I encourage all women to do.
All right, and you, Senator? I know you're the youngest in the room,
Right.
but have you encouraged? How many senators are there in Bermuda? Just for quick reference.
11. It's the five. Are you asking me how many senators?
Yeah, yeah, because in other countries,
So,
in other overseas territories, they don't have senators. So
Senators.
just clarify,
Hmm.
how does
okay,
the
so yes,
senator
sorry. So
thing go?
we have the 5 government senators. Two of which, sorry, are females. Myself and one
And what
other.
is the other? What's the other female senator, government senator name?
That is Senator Lindsay Simmons. And so
Oh, okay.
together in the Senate, and she's been a great source of support since we both, I guess, started this journey a year ago or almost a year ago. Um, Interestingly enough, I actually find a lot of support from the males in the party. But nevertheless, back to mentorship, I would say that although I'm not formally engaged in mentorship, I would say that on a day-to-day basis, I'm constantly mentoring. I'm constantly pouring into the women who are around me, constantly pouring into my daughter and her friends, and, you know, letting them know that they are capable of literally doing anything they want to do. I'm a person who really believes in the idea of dreaming big. And so any chance I get, I try to breathe that into the next person. I guess among some of the younger males in Bermuda, I'm known as PLP, or the government. And so they'll see me and they'll say, what are you guys up to now? But I have noticed that a lot of the women are actually watching and they're curious and they're saying, you know, how's it going? Are you enjoying it? What is it like? And so I feel like I have a special responsibility to show Bermudian young women that there's an opportunity for them in politics, in parliament, and in leadership roles generally. I think that in Bermuda and probably the other territories as well, you know, we see non-Bermudians in leadership positions. And for me, that should be one of our biggest things, Bermudianizing our leadership. Bermudians can make the best decisions for Bermudians. And so if we give opportunities or if we create space to build people up to take on these roles, we're going to be unstoppable. But it just starts with a conversation with, how are you doing? What do you need? How can I help you? Or answering a question when someone says, what are you guys even doing? So just, simplifying it sometimes for the persons who wouldn't have ordinarily been interested. It's all been very interesting.
Yep.
Thank you, Brenda.
And Mrs. Smith Archer, have you been mentoring young women? Or not necessarily young women, but women?
Yeah, so along with my other rascals, we have gotten together actually last year and decided to do a docu-series about Virgin Islands women in politics, because I feel it's so important to tell the story on and the journey of women that we have been on, as a way to motivate and inspire, my peers as well as younger women to say, yes, this is something that we can do, that we, leadership for our country, again, as one of my sisters said earlier, it's as any other profession. And that's how we should view it. There's a lot of stigma around politics for various reasons because of, what has happened in the past. And we know that those things have to change. And I think sometimes that's why they see women as a so-called threat, because we are there to change the status quo.
Mm-hmm.
So they're like, well, we ain't too sure, but
Yeah.
If we want to be better in our respective countries, we just have to start to do better. And again, it's not just necessarily a gender thing, but it's about solid, good leaders that get in there and make the best decisions with whatever information they have, and move the countries forward.
Yeah.
Okay.
Chris, can I just say something here on the issue of mentorship? Because one of the questions earlier was about whether there's mentorship for women in politics, and it'll vary from territory to territory. But I want to remind Arianna and Shaina that there is the Commonwealth Women Parliamentarians. The role of the CWP is to support women in office. Now, it is for women who are already in office. But when I was the leader, when I was the regional chair, one of the things that we talked about, in fact, and even at the wider Commonwealth level, was, is it okay to just wait for women to get in, or do we have to go find them and bring them in? And we all agreed on that we have to go find the women. But the CWP constitution still just says once you're in office. So I think, but from the territory level, it's possible to do that. Because what I did in Monserrat when I was the chair is I invited women who were interested in politics or who I wanted to get interested. But I also reached back and kept involved in the CWP women who had been there before. So we had lunches and we had meetings where the former speaker, former members of parliament met with the current members and met women who wanted to come in. And I think that's one of the things that really has to be done, because in the Caribbean, in our territories, we need women in leadership. And we had actually said so at our conference in St. Kitts 4 years ago or something, because we looked at the photograph of the leaders of CARICOM, the leaders of the OECS, the leaders, and there were no women. I mean, at the one time, I think the whole CARICOM had only the Jamaican prime minister, and that doesn't work. So yes, I think so. And let me just you put up a couple of questions here from Brenda. Let me just acknowledge Brenda, please. She's from Monserrat. She's so yes. I'm glad she's enjoying this. But yeah, look at the CWP. Look at the CWP and get them working, because that's
You know this person?
Aha! I have not seen her in years. She's an adult now. Oh my goodness! Hello, Joan. Yes. Yeah. Okay.
Awesome.
Thank you. Yes.
All right.
There was just one last thing that came to mind, and be famous. I keep hearing us talk about, women as the backbone. And at what point do women step out of the backbone role and, get a chance to lead and not just have to bear the burden of all those back office functions. And so a lot of times we speak of it positively, like, we have women involved. They're making sure that our party runs. But then it stops there. And it's, a bit concerning.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like you get so far and no further. And like we mentioned before too, there's those double standards that you have to adjust to, because right now I have to combat one where persons are like, she's changed parties, so that means she's unstable. How about I have a set of values, and if what I'm involved in does not align with what it is I hold as values, my personal values, I'm gonna move on. But men can do it, but if woman tries it, we're gonna have
There you go. Yeah.
So it's so much more conversations like these, Chris, and I love you for this in terms of, again, we are going to go out now intentionally and have these conversations highlighting what's actually even happening already, because again, until sometimes persons are elected as a prime minister, we don't know what's happening, and persons are kind of guessing it whether or not there's that movement that's happening. So we're gonna start our own pink wave. I saw your article that you did. It was in 2018. So we're gonna start our own version of a pink wave here in the region, and make sure that we
Yeah,
see the transformation we want to see.
Senator Hodgson, you actually asked a very good question. When do women step out? I would say, as my time in politics, women are stepping out at this point. They aren't waiting on men any longer to give you the okay to run. Um, the back to our party, right? The Progressive Labor Party. The women run that party, right? Let's be clear. When I say run it, I don't mean like, or the back office. No, they are the decision makers. They're they allow men to
They're at
have
the
a say,
table. Yeah.
right? They allow men to have a say, but they are the decision makers. Let's be clear. The chairperson is Miss Dawn Simmons. The deputy chair is Mrs. Lauren Bell. The secretary general is Miss Rochelle Woolridge. The membership secretary is Miss Davita Morris. Those are the most powerful positions in the executive of that party, right? Let's be honest. So about when do we step out? The thing that we also have to understand in in our in our Westminster system, we all know that there are some seats that will always be, barring the second coming of Santa Claus. Um, some seats will always be for X party, and some seats will always be for Y party, and then there are seats that are in between. And what I say to any candidate, whether the male or female, is that the seats that are for X party and you're on Y party, I'm not saying don't waste your time. What I'm saying is just be prepared to work. The seats that can go either way, get out there the day after the election that you lost, get out there and knock on the door. Once you build that rapport with the people, the next election is yours, right? Um, Now, don't get me wrong. There are some safe seats that some people, whether they be male or females, feel as if they are going to stay in that seat until the Undertaker comes for them, right? So that's a challenge in itself, but that has to be dealt with on a branch level or party level. But my point to the women of the region is that it's yours for the taking. In Bermuda, I am part of the campaign team in Bermuda, right? The statistics are clear. It's the women that decide which part is going to be in. Once you know that the lead, the maternal, the matriarch of the family is on your side, you could guarantee everybody in that house is voting for you. And if on the reverse, you find out she's not on your side, you could guarantee you're not going
You
to
will
win
get
that,
those.
right?
Yep.
Statistics are clear. It's in Bermuda. 60% of the those that turn out to vote, 55% of those who are registered to vote are women. 60+% of those who turn out to vote are women. The women are deciding who's going to win every election in Bermuda, right? They may not, they may find themselves so disgusted, but they can't vote for the next party. So they're just going to tell everybody, no, we're going to stay home today. We're not voting today, right? That's what happened to the other party in Bermuda last election a year ago. They were so that their families were so disgusted with their behavior, they just said, okay, we're not coming out, right? The women decided that. So I say that respectfully to Senator Hodgson. It's a very good question. Connect with the women, and you have the next election in your hand. So I will leave it at that, and Eden is going to ask the final round of questions.
Thank you so much. This is incredibly enlightening and inspiring. I for one am leaning more toward the pendulum. I'm sorry. I for one am leaning more for the pendulum to swing in the other direction. Actually, I don't think it's so much support as needed for male politicians. I think it's guidance and transformation and evolution that I see women bringing in the political arena, and that's certainly feels like what happened here in Cayman. My question is kind of based on that. Is that we just had an avalanche of independent candidates winning in Cayman. People were very, done with what was happening between parties and the same old. And we also have the most women who have ever sat in government, the most women who have ever been in parliament in general. And so it was a very historic time. And as I was out at different gatherings, demonstrations, meetings, and things that were happening in April around the elections, and as I was staying up at night talking with people and doing discourse and watching my wife create video content for these candidates for MP Catherine Wilkes, I realized that so often when I looked around, there were women all around me at every capacity, from the grassroots, young, elder, in every single way guiding this process. And I don't mean, I mean as the backbone, and also as the hands, as the feet, as the head, as the heart, as every part of it. And to a large extent, I was just like, okay, let me be guided here on what we can do to bring some real transformation. My question is in two parts. Is what are the differences that you see between leadership in men and leadership in women? And how do we combine the strengths and really progress equality in leadership for the greater good, for the common good? How do we harness this energy, and what are the creative differences that can really create a synthesis that leads us to the next stage here as countries and as people and as a territory, as individual territories and as humans? Madam Speaker?
Yeah, thanks, Eden. I think if we, and Chris, you'd have heard me say this before, I think, because it's sort of like, it's a sticking point for me. One of the things that I think we don't do enough of is that we often we are not clear enough about what kind of people we want to be. Our governments talk about infrastructure. I was in Cayman Islands 3 or 4 years ago, and I was amazed at the construction going on. We drove through the tunnel, and I'm thinking, and Cayman Islands is not unique. All of the other islands, all of the other territories, you hear politicians, you hear the government, the ministers and so on talk about infrastructure. We're building buildings, we're building roads and bridges, airports, ports. BVI, they got the new airport and so on. But we're not spending as much time talking about what kind of people, what kind of society we want, how we want to be. And I think that's where we need to start. I really think that's where we need to start. We need to put as much energy, as much thought, as much resources into who we are as a people, as we are putting into what we have. Mm-hmm. And then the conversation about how we work together will be easier to come by, because women and men are complementary. I mean, there was a time in my life when I used to teach my nieces and stuff that I'm a girl. There's nothing a boy can do that I cannot do. I can do anything a boy can do, And I grew up with boys. I played sports. I did all the things that boys did. I went swimming. I climbed trees. I did all that stuff. Played cricket. So, but there's a way that we have been socialized. Men have been socialized to be, to be in charge and to take charge and be the leader and not cry and not be emotional and so on. And women are being socialized to be more nurturing and collaborative. Now, I have my own personal views about bringing up children, but the fact of the matter is that this is where we are. And so what we need to do is find ways, intentionally go look for ways to put these things together, so that when we come together, we have the clear, the way we communicate. Eden, when you talk to people, I talk to my husband, and I'm thinking through something, and he's immediately going to tell me, well, what you should do is so and so. Well, maybe I don't really want you to tell me what I should do, because I kind of know what I'm supposed to. I just want to talk through it. So women bring this ability to listen to people's stories and talk through stuff and allow people to be, and men come up with solutions. Men do a lot of teamwork, and you're in charge, and we do what you say. And women do a lot more collaborating, and all of those different skill sets are important. So we bring these different things that we need to value equally and put together intentionally. And it starts, I think, as far as politics is concerned, it begins with the political parties. Political parties have to say, this is the kind of party that we want, this is how we are going to operate, and then go from there. And there are people who have thoughts about whether we should have the political parties. I was intrigued and interested and really quite excited by the independents who won in the Cayman Islands, because last elections in Monserrat 2019, that was the thinking. Everybody's going to go independent because we tired of these parties, and then election night came, and it was down the line, strictly parties. So, but these, again, like we said before, conversations need to be had over and over and over and over again, but clearly, intentionally. This is what we want to have happen. We're having this conversation to lead us there.
Yep.
Thank you. Incredible. And Senator Hodgson?
I would say, I think the men and women share a lot of, similarities. But what does change is how people perceive those. Can you hear me? Sorry. Yeah. Oh, sorry. So I think the difference is how people perceive those different personality qualities, so to speak. When a man is decisive, sure of himself, he's a man. When a woman is decisive, sure of herself, perhaps she's acting like a man. And so I think that leadership is one of those things. You're not necessarily born a leader. Maybe you do have some leadership qualities, but I think that anybody can be fashioned to lead, and to find the qualities about themselves that work, and then to address the bits of them that doesn't necessarily work in the arena that they are in. And so even for myself, especially as a young person, I'm trying to figure it out while trying to encourage my daughter to find out who she's going to be, and then finding out what my future looks like. So it's a constant battle. It's a constant challenge. But if you're aware that it's something that you need to work on, if you're aware that you can change who you are, that you can develop who you are, that you can become better than, who you were yesterday, you can lead. And it doesn't matter if you're a man, woman. And so show up as whoever you are. I think a lot of people talking about finding their passion, like, your passion is just that thing that you do and it works. And so just being in that, living in that, and seeing how far it can go, to me, that's what really matters.
Yeah. Amen.
Amen. Yes.
I concur with everything that has been said, Mr. Speaker. I think in terms of different perspective, the ladies have touched on it. We tend to think more along the lines of people, quality of life. The roads are nice and having all that nice stuff, but if you can't get access to quality healthcare, quality education, because the people are the assets of a country. A lot of times we like to talk about we don't have natural resources. Your people are your first asset, and if you're not developing them, you're not setting up sustainable development in any country. And I think for us as women, we have that legacy mindset, because again, as from coming from a nurturing spirit as mothers, we tend to think along those lines naturally. Not to say that men, sometimes don't feel that way. So, as Madam Speaker said, it's about the complementary spirits come in and saying, we cover all bases because you have different perspectives at the table. And that's the importance of having both men and women, in the room at the table making decisions. So we get the best ideas. I always say it's about getting the best ideas. It's not about, well, you have a good idea and we gotta go with that because you're the leader, but that you're open enough to say, well, let's hear all the ideas and then figure out what's the best solution for the problem, or to accomplish the objective that we're trying to achieve. Someone asked in one of the earlier comments what education background that would be needed, and Ariana touched on it. Leadership is a skill that's developed. Your leadership skills are things that you can learn and teach yourself as you go along the way. Your educational background, for me, we've seen, in the Caribbean especially, any and everybody gets up and runs for political office. In some jurisdictions, you see more professionals, say lawyers or business people that may get involved. But we don't want it to become down to, persons have to have a particular educational background per se. But then again, that when it comes to their leadership ability or their competency, that's very important. I would say. And then there are so many other areas in terms of not just being a parliamentarian, but chairman of parties. Those are key people, as Chris pointed out, that people need to understand. They have just as much influence, if not more, than the person actually sitting in the seat and making the final decision, because they surround themselves with persons that are there to give the best advice possible in order to make the necessary decisions that we have. So there's so much more. Again, whether we have opportunity in forums like this, or talking to family members or within our communities to get the word out, that about what politics is really about. There's politics, there's politicking. So I think we have to be very clear as women, what it is we're after, what it is we're desiring to be involved in, and what we stand for, and wanting to see at the end of the day the best for our country. And the country is the people. It's not, all these projects. I have a pet peeve with it as well, Madam Speaker. It's like, we'll project out everything, spend $300 million every year, and then you're still having issues around those things that are affecting people's quality of life.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow, powerful. I think that's something that every Caribbean person can feel going on in our region. It's certainly happening in Cayman here, where it's policy is not necessarily serving the people, and you wonder if we need a shift in how the policy making happens.
Yeah. Yep. And I just want to touch on this real quick. Somebody dropped a comment talking about the COI that's currently happening in the Virgin Islands. And of course, this goes back to the same thing, leadership competence. What's been happening over not just now, but, the last 2 decades. And whether or not it's a young government and not knowing what to do. And having been in the public service, this is where I think the role of the politicians or the political directorate and the public service has to be understood better. Because if I walk into office tomorrow, the public service has been there for years. They're supposed to know what the procedures and the policies are that are in play. My job is to make decisions based on what the systems are. So if the public service isn't doing what they're supposed to do, the politicians aren't doing what they're supposed to do, then you end up with situations of being investigated, right? I mean, that's for another show. But just to respond to what she's saying, is something where it's not about inexperience with politicians in government, because sometimes politicians be in there for 40 years and they still make the same mistakes. So it's all about perspective and all about what the objectives are in terms of what they're in office to do, and wanting to do the right thing by the people all the time. So someone was asking if the program is recorded. So yes, it is available on Territories Talk Facebook page. So you can always go back and view it again if you just tuned in, because some persons might have just gotten the word about this awesome conversation. Chris, I think this went even better than we expected tonight. What do you think?
Well, I'm sitting there saying, oh man, well, close to the 2 hour mark, but it's
Oh, wow.
see the challenge is because it's across the whole region.
Yeah.
For people in Bermuda, thanks to Channel 82, for people in Bermuda, it's now 10:30. So
Mhm.
some people may be a little bit tired. For people in the Eastern Caribbean, it's now 9:30, and for people in the Western Caribbean, it's now 8:30. So I think the concept is great, and I think that the conversation, more than the concept, the conversation is great because Eden and I just have to just shut up.
This is how things go when you put women in charge.
There you go.
Better.
Yeah. So I think it's great and is especially pulling in women across the region because if you notice, most of the questions have come from women, and I think once women recognize that this show or any other show is giving them their due worth,
Mhm.
then they will gravitate towards it. And like I said, once a month, this conversation will be about women in leadership.
Awesome. So
So
again,
what?
if they haven't, they can go on the Facebook page and like our Territories Talk. Actually, all our shows are done on Facebook Live. So you can go back and watch any of the episodes that have gone before and share them with other persons that are off of Facebook. So that we keep it going. See, this is one of my other rascals too here, Eden. I got a set of them, I'm setting up. Hey, Dr. Samuel. All right. All right, Chris. So,
Yes. So I wanna take a moment just to thank the three of you ladies for making this conversation, the content
Thank
and
you.
conversation what it was because it's well needed. You represent not just your individual audience, but you represent the overseas territories and the Caribbean region. And as Madam Speaker now knows, the Africans, our African brothers and sisters, are looking in at us as us Caribbean. How do you say that again?
Caribbean.
Caribbeaners,
Yeah,
Caribbeaners.
I gotta figure out if that's an actual word, but us West Indians, let's put it that way.
Yeah.
And it's encouraging others to be part of the conversation. So next the next show we'll be having a lady from Anguilla. We haven't had any guests from Anguilla as of yet.
Mhm.
So what I would ask each one of you is over the course of time to seek other women from not just your island, but from other overseas territories and see if they want to be guests. Um, so once again, thank you, Madam Speaker, thank you,
Thank
Senator,
you.
and
Thank you.
thank you, future Old Territory District
Yes, sir.
Representative. Um, Thank you, Eden, as well. Sorry, my apologies.
Yeah,
Don't
thank you,
forget him.
Chris.
My,
I
my,
want to encourage everyone who's tuning in. There's several links that have been put into the comments, and they're going to be
Mhm.
there on the feed on the page. Explore those links, and check it out, and do your own research, and let's get these conversations happening around dinner tables, in bars, at parties, around in out in at shopping mart. This is the type of stuff that we need to be talking about at the markets and when we bump into each other, when we're sitting down with each other, and these are evolving conversations that can inform our day-to-day life. And I'm very thankful for this incredible evening. Thank you so much for this conversation. Thank you so much,
yeah.
and for all you do in our region.
Before we part, I just want to give a shout out to the people of Bermuda are watching this on Channel 82. I want to thank Lemon Woods once again. Unfortunately, in Bermuda, we've recorded yet another loss of life today from COVID. Um, in the last 3 weeks, we've lost three Bermudians through COVID. We currently have 40 persons in the hospital and 12 persons in ICU. We are past the 1,000 mark of active cases in Bermuda. So that's to say we are in our fourth wave. And I say this, unfortunately, we have to, this is always going to be a topic. Right now, it's a current topic on this show of the Delta variant of COVID is killing our people. Irrespective of people's views, the reality is that 90 to 95% of those who are hospitalized or have passed away are non-immunized persons. So I suggest if you are not immunized, to please consult your medical professional. Don't listen to the TikToks. Don't listen to the other people's opinion. You know, we have a challenge in our Caribbean region, as Honorable Gaston Brown said, we are facing almost near catastrophe in our region when
Mhm.
it comes to COVID. Because look at Cayman Islands, you all are safe, relatively safe, but your government has had to push back opening up the island.
Yeah, and we're
The-
having community spread here that's grown exponentially over the last few days
and you
alone.
don't have
So
tourists as yet, right?
right. So get vaccinated, and also we took a test because of a beginning of school year bug was going around. I have a 6-year-old as well, Senator Hodgson, a 6-year-old boy, and so the beginning of school year bug was going around, and his school thankfully has been so proactive and very very creating a very positive atmosphere about things, and they suggested going to get tested just in case some of these symptoms were showing up, and since there had been community
Mhm.
spread recorded, and me and my wife and my son went to get tested, and it was an absolutely easy process. So if we have free testing available here in Cayman, I hope that is happening across the region as much as possible. But it definitely gave me a peace of mind, and we've been vaxxed. Of course, my son can't be vaxxed, but if you have access to tests as well, it is a great peace of mind. I have a at-risk mother, and so just knowing that, and I would be willing to go do that every week if that's what it took to keep the community safe and to keep our country safe. And so if you have access to these things, whatever the tools are that you have
Yep.
out there that are legitimate tools, take advantage of them in this battle, and use true knowledge. And because we're just now at the start after 14 months of no community spread, so we have to be very aware of exactly what it is you're saying, Chris. It's
Yep.
we have to be serious about this thing, and we have to utilize and leverage technology, information, everything that is at hand to deal with it. And I'm very sorry that you have lost another Bermudian today.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Mm.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Prayers
like I
for
said, I mean, even in the Virgin Islands, they in July they went through
Yep.
something terrible, right?
Yeah.
I know it's tapered down, but just one of the things with this show is that we are able to parlay our experience in one overseas territory to say, listen, this is
Mhm.
what may happen, this is what could happen, this is what you should do when it happens. And I can, unfortunately, just the way these variants are going, it's
Mhm.
only a matter of time before the Virgin Islands gets another wave because
Yeah.
your immunization rate is still we are at close to 70%, and
Uh-huh.
we're having this issue.
Yeah.
So
And that's the thing that, to kind of dovetail off of what Eden says is like whatever tools that we have, we need to constantly be vigilant, because I know that was one of the things for me where I've been traveling since last year, July, in and out of the country. And I remember coming home in June, and I was really, flabbergasted. I'm like, what's happening? Everybody's putting on the mask. We're hugging up. And
Mm.
we had graduations. We had, um, different community gatherings that started up. And by beginning of July, cases were like this. And it didn't go like this. It went like this. So it's something where, we're globally we're gonna be in this situation for a while, and I know a lot of people are anxious to have normalcy and be able to quote unquote normal having a normal life again. But it's something where we really have to continue to be disciplined in everything that we're doing, still adhering to the protocols, doing the vaccinations, until it's safe to do otherwise, because it's still a little choppy waters going through, right, Madam Speaker?
Yeah.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
Senator Hodgson, what advice would you give to the young people of the region in regards to COVID mitigation? As you're somebody who's right in the middle of it.
I think the biggest thing is the common sense bits. Really paying attention to the recommendations to socially distance, to stay in your bubbles. Use hand sanitizer when you walk into the store, to wipe down the hand. It can make a big difference in our community.
You're okay. You were a little bit breaking up, but we got you.
Madam Speaker, what is it like in Montserrat?
Well, Monserrat, we were doing okay for a while, but then the last month or so, we've had cases coming in. Not community spread. People coming in. Is it okay? Oh,
I think Arianna needs to. Senator Hodgson might need to mute.
yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yes, Monserrat's been struggling this last month or so. Again, just like you said, Shaina, there was a time people had kind of stop wearing the mask. People all over the place, up and down. But yeah, it's picking up again, and the government just made the decision, actually just announced it a week or so ago, that starting in October, the only people who are going to be allowed in will be people who are vaccinated, because the ones that they've caught recently were all people just coming in. You in Montserrat, you quarantine for 5 days if you've been vaccinated, and for 14 if you're not. Unfortunately, these last 5, 6, 8 cases were all caught either as soon as they came in or during the quarantine period, so they didn't get out into the community. Although we had this one case earlier in the year where there was a man on quarantine, and his girlfriends were visiting, and this is and so at one point there were 10, 11 people who had been exposed. But the government has made some significant decisions about that, and so quarantine is much more it's policed more strictly now, and so but
So he had his own cluster going on. That's what you're saying.
Yeah.
You see how you guys get us in trouble, Chris? Eden, you see this?
Not me. I stay home.
One person. You guys
one person. But the traffic
I keep telling people, it only takes one.
Exactly.
Because one person goes into contact, in the context of the BVI, we have 4 main populated islands. If I make a round in one day, you imagine.
Yeah.
That's a lot of people. So we really have to be vigilant and be mindful. Yeah. So, but I would say by God's grace, we're going to get over this, and hopefully we're better for it, because it's definitely something where there's a lot of lessons learned when it comes to this is a new kind of disaster that we now have to plan for. And I didn't envy any leader in this hour that had to make some of these decisions, because there were no easy decisions to be made at all. But we got to keep pressing forward, learning from our mistakes, and just keep getting better as we go.
I really look at this forum here as because one of my the division that we're experiencing in Cayman is as scary or scarier to me than COVID, because we have climate change to deal with. We have massive inequities and growing poverty here, and different things and disparities in the region, and we have to be united in order to face the challenges of this era, and we have to find ways out of this very scary time to find some unity again. And this is one thing that I see here as what this forum shows so much promise in finding some unity as a people, learning about each other, learning how we do things. You all might have elected roles, but we speaking as people and finding commonality and unity together. I think it's a very important thing in this time. It's so easy to get divided, and that does none of us any good. It just doesn't do any of us any good. So I hope that we can find a way to face the challenges of these times as a unified people, regionally and in each country.
Yeah, I think it's important. Yeah,
Definitely. When we have some of that, Eden, we can relate because we've had those challenges here. So the community unity is definitely important, as well as regional unity, in terms of providing the support. So hopefully that grows.
All right, folks. Well, can you hear me?
Yep, go ahead.
Okay. Well, once again, ladies, times 3. Thank you once again. Eden, thanks for being my backup.
Thank you, brother.
We'll be back again on the 29th of September. Tune into our Facebook page
with Shirley Hurlston from Cayman.
Yes, another strong and powerful woman. So we already have somebody from Anguilla, a lady from Anguilla, a lady from Cayman Islands, and they'll be discussing not necessarily women in leadership, but examples of women in leadership and with community and regional issues. And hopefully we'll have someone from Turks and Caicos, because the ethos of the show is to give voice to everyone in every island of the overseas territories, because far too often other regional media has left us out of the equation. So this is our avenue for each one of our 6 sister islands. We all have smaller sister islands, but our main islands to speak and empower each other with knowledge. So thank you once again, and see you all in 2 weeks. Well, not you all, but see you all in Channel 82, and on Facebook. We'll see you in 2 weeks' time. Any closing words, Madam Speaker?
But
before
thank you.
Close the house.
That's a good one.
Just thank you. I think this is, I totally agree. This is a wonderful forum. And you know how I feel. I strongly agree that we need to be working together. That's how we're going to get things done. And this whole reaching out and connecting and figuring things out together, I think is critical. It's helpful, and it really is the only way we're going to get through. And I think again that this is one of those instances where again we have to decide that we are going to do this. We are going to be like this, and have those conversations where at the dinner table, at the bar, where we talk about being intentional about working together. So Cayman Islands call Monserrat, BVI, talk to Anguilla. Let's all talk together and figure it out. I really think it's important, and this is a wonderful forum for it. And I'm honored and pleased that I got invited. And I'm really happy to meet. Hi. To meet everybody. Yes.
All right. That's the little rascal.
That's a little rascal. Beautiful.
All right. So thank you once again. What's the little rascal name? Hi, little rascal.
He's muted, so we can't hear.
What's your name?
Liam.
I just got a WhatsApp from one of our powerful women in Bermuda. Miss Lynn Wade says, I enjoyed the Territory Talk show and definitely look forward to the next one. So just letting you know, just giving you some positive feedback.
Yeah.
Beautiful. 2 thumbs up.
Great.
All right. So
all right.
Good night, everyone.
All right. we have a meeting after the meeting.
Yeah, you guys can stay in.
All right.
Good night.